It is a month of resistance. It is a month of high elations and extreme sorrow. Elated because of our resistance, sad because of our losses. It is indeed a month of reflection on all of the above. For me, the three most significant events of ours of Jonathan Jackson raid on the Marin County Courthouse of 1970. The August 1971 liberation of the Justice Center by Comrade George Jackson and Nat Turner slave uprising of 1831. Jonathan, audacity, and more audacity describes the move of August 7, 1970, in which he liberated William Christmas, James McClain, and Rochelle McGee for a short time before being shot dead. Jonathan's raid was an attempt to free not only those brothers, but in taking hostages, he sought to have bargaining chips to later trade in for his brother's freedom. Of course, it was not just about the freedom of George, but it was also about freeing all of George's comrades. To me, Jonathan is a hero. His heroic act had the impact of making many of us inside even more committed to the struggle and willing to give up our lives to the revolution. His act was totally inspiring. In my opinion, Nat Turner and George Jackson are forever linked by events that took place 140 years apart. The day that George was shot in the head by prison officials as he lay wounded on the ground just happened to be the same day, different year, but the same day that Nat Turner began his insurrection. If Comrade had chosen that day to liberate, instead of having it forced upon him by prison officials in their initial attempt to assassinate him on that day, he could not have chosen a better day. They both were about making revolution in their lifetime. Nat sought to end black slavery by rising up and killing the slave owners, thereby freeing the slaves. Comrade George sought to end neo-slavery by educating the people to the evils and inhumanity of a racist, oppressive, capitalist system, and to show that resistance is always possible, as long as you have the will and the courage to do so. He showed that if you could come together, you could do some things. You could make some changes. He gave his life to the struggle for self-determination, which to him is more important than life itself. I don't care how long I live. Over this I have no control. But I do care about what kind of life I live. And I can control this. I may not live but another 5 minutes. But it'll be 5 minutes, definitely on my terms. I will never, never trade my self-determination. Control over circumstances that surround my existence is of the first importance to me. Comrade hated the capitalist system. He hated how it played workers off against one another. and I had turned people against themselves. He knew that those who govern have a responsibility to the rest of us to represent us by providing from the cradle to the grave. Equitable share of wealth and privilege, meaningful social roles, education, medical care, food, shelter, and understanding should be guaranteed at birth. He knew that wealth, land, and resources should be held in common for all. There should not be a hierarchy that stood above us all. In his personal life, George would share with others whatever commissary that he had. He didn't have to know you. He truly believed in looking out for those who did not have. He was a true example of what a revolutionary who is guided by true feelings of love does in practice. Personally, for me, it is a time of painful remembrance. The memory of Jonathan Jackson raid on Marin County Courthouse is painful. William Christmas, I knew personally, had chopped it up with him on the yard at San Quentin on several occasions. On the morning of his death, as he was in the foyer area of the Justice Center, I joked with him, and he didn't respond. This is not like him. Later on, I realized that he most likely had something heavier on his mind, like freedom. I personally knew Michelle McGee, who still languished in a California prison 41 years later. The remembering of August 21st, 1971, when Comrade George Jackson had his life snuffed out, is painful. To know that prison officials got away with murder on that day and have never paid any dues for the crime that they committed against one of our greatest teachers, resistors, and leaders is painful. In fact, in court, they lied about how he died, thereby covering up his murder. August 21st was a day of brutal beatings and nigger calls, of lying naked on the grass while hog-tied. It was a day of extreme humiliation, of being forced to crawl on my elbows and knees and listen to prison guards sing a song about George Jackson lying or rotting in his grave. That's painful. I'm sure that Nat Turner experienced worse as he waited to be hanged. It was also a day of vengeance, where prisoners took revenge against their tormentors. Prison guards, slaying 3 of them, along with 2 trustees who unfortunately were in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm sorry for them. Out of the events of that day, 6 prisoners, Hugo Pinell, Frida Drongo, Luis Talamantes, David Johnson, Johnny Spain, and Willie Sundiata Tate were singled out for punishment by the state and became known as the San Quentin Six. In 1971, legal proceedings were initiated against